So today's video is a little bit different in style than the normal videos that I typically post here on my channel, but I wanted to take the chance to kind of bring you guys behind the scenes with me and do almost like a vlog style type of video here, which is out of the ordinary for me because I'm typically uploading more polished or more scripted types of videos here on Thriving Scribe's channel. But today I really wanted to try something a little bit differently and kind of just take you guys behind the scenes with me as I'm planning out my year, the upcoming year, which is going to be 2022. Today I'll be utilizing this fun calendar back here to actually map out my year, and so I wanted to take you guys behind the scenes with me, so if you're also planning out your year, you can kind of see how I do it and maybe you can get some helpful tips along the way. So if you end up liking this type of video, if you like the more behind the scenes style vlog type videos and you want to see more of them on my channel, definitely let me know in the comments of this video so I can know what you guys like and what you're interested in watching from me, and then I can make more of that as time goes by so you can see more of what you like. So what I'm actually going to be doing today is planning out the year ahead, the year of 2022, everything that I want to do, the goals that I'm going to be pursuing, the projects that I'm going to be working on, any launches that I have coming up. And I already know by the look of my brainstorming session that I did yesterday that I've got a lot that I am going to be juggling and working on at the same time this year. So a little bit of backstory for those of you who may not be familiar with me and everything that I have going on. I am a fiction author, so I actually have a couple of different pen names, and I also have a couple of other non-fiction related businesses like Thriving Scribes and a couple of other brands that I manage as well that don't particularly have to do with authorship. So I have lots of things going on at different times and lots of projects that I'm going to be working on and have to kind of fit in and find where they're going to fit into my year. So while a lot of what I'm going to be talking about when it comes to my fiction work, my pen names, planning my my book launch schedule and things like that will really apply to you as a fiction author, while the rest of it, like planning my launches for Thriving Scribes and those kinds of things, might not directly apply to you, but the same general structure of planning goes into it, and as it would if I was planning only for my fiction author work. So let's go ahead and talk about why I do this, why I plan a year up front. I've done this every year that I've been in business for like at least the past 6 years. I've been in business for about 10 years, and about 6 of those I've started really focusing in on doing an annual strategy and making sure I know what it is that I'm doing when I set out at the beginning of the year to achieve different things, right? Knowing the direction that I'm going. My process has definitely evolved over that time, but let's go ahead and talk about why it is that I like to do this annual strategy session every single year and what the benefits are for me. The first and the biggest reason why I do this is because of overwhelm. My personality type, I've learned, is super prone to getting overwhelmed when I have lots of things going on like I do, and I don't know what's happening and when. I don't know what I should focus on. I tend to get really overwhelmed, and I tend to succumb to entrepreneur burnout. I've hit some really bad cases of overwhelm and burnout in the past, and I know that I don't want to invite that kind of behavior into my business anymore. And so that's why when I set out to do this planning, it helps me because I can see what is my focus right now, what am I working towards, what's coming next, right? Is there any wiggle room? Can I take some time off? Can I stretch this out more and pace myself? Being able to see it all on the calendar really helps manage the overwhelm factor of authorship and business in general for me. Now, I will say that planning a whole year up front is a pretty big task. It does take some dedicated time to set aside and actually focus on getting it done. It does take a few tools, whether those tools that you choose to do are paper or digital type tools. It does take some tools and some time and some energy dedicated to it to get it figured out and get this strategy session completed, but it really is beneficial overall. I've definitely learned that for when I compare before, when I never did this and I was kind of winging it all year, to now when I do strategize my years, I can see the big difference between what I'm able to accomplish in those years and how I feel while I actually do accomplish those things. Now, also keeping in mind that the strategy that I map out when I do these strategy sessions, I know for sure that it doesn't have to be like concreted in, right? It's not set in stone. So I do know that over the year things change, things come up, and I allow myself to look at it in the lens of, okay, so this is the plan. This would be my ideal plan of how I want it to go. That doesn't mean that things won't change or shift later on. I can come in, erase things, move things around as needed. But basically these annual strategy sessions are really just to map out the ideal year and really get laser focused on what it is that I want to achieve. So let's go ahead and talk about the tools that I actually use to get this done. The main tools that I use for planning and managing my author business are my Thriving Scribes Planner, Asana, and Notion. So I have a hybrid method here of digital and paper planning. If you want to see how I use those 3 different tools simultaneously, I do have a video on how I manage my author business, how I get everything done. You should see it up in the top of the video right now if you want to go and check that out and watch how those kind of synchronize to create a holistic planning and management system for my business. But as of the strategy session, there are a couple of other things that I'm going to be using. I'm going to be using a whiteboard as well as that giant wall calendar over there that I just recently picked up and I'm super excited to use. But when it comes specifically to this strategy session, I'm also going to be using 2 other tools, which are going to be a whiteboard as well as this big giant annual calendar that you see back there. That's really going to help me visualize and map out my year. So I'm going to show you exactly how I use that here in a little bit as we get further on into the process. So I'm coming at you today in my office, which is a little less polished than where I usually film because it's actually an office/homeschool room. And so you'll see there's a lot more clutter. It's not as pretty. It's definitely fallen last in our to-do list when it comes to renovating our home, which we're working on right now. And we're going to talk all about annual planning and how I do it. So the first step in my annual planning process is actually to hold a big review session because I think that it's very important in order to plan where you're going and be able to strategize it in the best way possible. You really need to know where you've been and what those results were for you. So my annual review session is when I sit down and I really reflect on the past year. What projects did I pursue? What were the results that I got on the actions that I was taking? What do I feel needs to be shifted or changed? What was going well and what I should keep on doing this year as well? What should kind of, keep on happening throughout the year? If you want a more detailed description, a step-by-step process on how to do your own annual author review, I have a video on my channel all about it that I just recently published. You can go and see that by clicking right up here. It should be on your screen somewhere, and you can go on over there and it will guide you right through doing your own annual author review. And then after I finish my annual author review, it's time to move on to when I am actively considering the year ahead. So I really start doing the big picture planning and considering my goals, what projects I want to pursue, what am I excited about, what can be pushed back until next year. So really what I start off by doing is brain dumping all of the different things that I am considering doing, all the different projects I am considering taking on, what projects I'm still in the middle of and I've got to wrap up, and put them all in one big list and kind of just go through the process of elimination and really determining what's the best fit for this year. What have I already set off doing and I know I need to finish? What things am I most passionate about? What projects need to be made a priority? Which ones can be fit in if I have time, and which ones can be pushed off until a later date? And so that's what I did all yesterday, and I kind of just scribbled it all down on a piece of paper. And then after I did that, I actually took all of the projects that I'm going to be focusing on for the year once I decided what I was going to be doing, and I started organizing it. So you can see I did it on a big whiteboard. I'm going to show you right over here. I actually have my whiteboard, and you're going to see that I have it sectioned into 3 different pieces. So the red over there is all of what I am focusing on for my fiction works. Those are all of the projects that I'm going to be doing, as well as the big action steps that are needed to get those done. I've also got in green all of the projects that I'm doing for Thriving Scribes. I did the same kind of thing with the big deadlines or action steps needed for that. And then in purple over there, I have some of the other things that I'm doing for the other brands that I manage, and the other projects that I'm currently working on as well. So I've got everything kind of laid out there, and that is really what I'm going to be focusing on planning out and strategizing and piecing into my calendar today to get all set up and ready to go for when it's time to start taking action in the new year. Now, I'm not going to zoom up and read them all off to you, but I am going to give you a general summary of what's on that board. My focus is launching BRIT Poe's fiction line and really focusing hard on that. Now, BRIT Poe is a high fantasy / romantic fantasy pen name that has really been 2 years in the making right now. It's 2 years past due. I had originally planned on launching this about 2 years ago, but with everything that was going on in my life, it just kept getting pushed back, and my focuses kept realigning, and I never actually hit publish. And so 2022 is the year that I'm really focusing on doing that. So for the BRIT Poe pen name, what I'm focusing on is publishing 4 books in 2022. The 4 books are all going to be in the same series, and so that is my strategy going forward for 2022. I also, though, have just recently in the past couple months started a serial on Kindle Vella on inside of this pen name as well, and I've got plans for another serial to go live under an urban fantasy pen name of mine, only if I can fit it in later on this year, if I feel like I have enough free time and enough energy to give to that project, or else it might just need to be pushed back until later. So that is what I'm focusing on this year for my fiction work. When it comes to Thriving Scribes, I have a few different programs that I'm going to be launching that are new. I have a couple live round of my programs that I want to run, as well as some new services coming on up into the mix. So I've got a pretty diverse range here of things going on in my year that are going to all kind of need my attention. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to be showing you how I take that blank calendar and I turn it into a map that I'm actually going to be following throughout the entire year. Okay, so here we are in front of my giant, beautiful wall calendar that I just grabbed off of Amazon. I will make sure that I link it in the description of this video if you want to grab your own. It hangs well, it looks nice, it looks big enough to get the job done, so that is what I'm most excited about. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing that I'm going to do is pull out my colors. It's the same colors that I used over here for my board when I was doing my brainstorming list. And so I'm just going to get my same markers out because I like to color code. So red is going to be for fiction work, purple was for my other brands that I work on, and green are going to be for Thriving Scribes. And then I'm going to get my black one here because this is what I'm going to use for at first for things that aren't specifically related to those brands. So the first thing that I always do is I actually mark off any time that I'm not going to be working. So this is going to be vacations that I know are coming up. This is going to be holidays that I know, birthdays, those kinds of things. The main thing that I've got going on that I know for sure is happening that I'm not going to be able to work for an entire month is in March. March, I'm not planning anything in my business because I'm going to be moving. We're a Navy family and the military is moving us, but I'm not going to let it deter me from planning. I'm just going to leave the entire month of March open. If I get things done, great, but I'm not going to try to schedule anything during that month at all. So what I do is I literally just mark it off. You can see I actually put here on day 1, moving month. This is the day here that my husband has to be at work. So sometime from March 1st to April 4th, we have to relocate. So I know that here, I'm going to mark it off as a reminder that I'm not doing anything this month. And then I go and do the same thing for any other break. So I know that I probably won't want to work near like Christmas time. I always take that time off really. 2 weeks of Christmas time. I know that in August, since I said that we homeschool, I actually am not going to, for like the week that we begin homeschooling, I do really light work. So I know that I don't want to do anything during that time. That's big. Don't hold a book launch during that time. Don't do anything crazy. So over here in August, I usually start about this week. I'm going to just outline it and give myself a note. Now I know that I usually take like a time off in the summer, usually because we like to take a family vacation, but I don't have that date right now because again, we don't know what this year is going to look like because we're moving. So I am just going to make like a mental note that we're probably going to be taking a vacation sometime in, if I would have to guess, I would say July. So I'm going to, right here on these dates, I'm just going to leave myself a note that we'll probably be doing a family vacation this month. And then that's about it with doing time off. Now you might have more time that you need to block off for yourself to be free. You might need less time. Whatever, makes sense for you, that's what I recommend doing. So after that, now I have all of the time that I know I won't be working and I do not need to be scheduling in anything heavy. Now I go in with my first thing. The most important when it comes to doing planning for my books, I always start in mind of the launch dates that I want, and then I kind of reverse engineer that on how everything else is going to go. So when I was planning, I told you in the beginning of this video that I am going to be trying to publish 4 books this year. I'm doing what I call kind of semi-rapid release because it's not exactly rapid release like back to back to back. However, I am publishing basically a book every 3 months, once a quarter, and that is, to me at least, considered a version of rapid releasing. And so I'm going to basically have a book launch every 3 or so months. So I've got my red pen here, and I'm going to go ahead and just mark off the first date of my projected launch for book 1 in the series that I'm going to be publishing this year. And I'm going to do right here, I'm going to highlight it. So I've got book 1 launch, and then I know that my launches last about a week. So I'm just gonna draw this out here to remind myself that this whole week really is going to be launch week, that it's not just that one day. So I need to make sure that these aren't also task heavy unless it relates to the launch. And then I'm just gonna repeat this process for the rest of the books in the series. Alright, so I've got my launch dates in there now, and I've got those launch weeks for those books each kind of blocked off so that I know they are launch weeks. And now it's time for me to go ahead and start filling in the important steps that I'm basically going to be doing, any deadlines that I need to hit inside of those times so that I can meet those launches, right? So I have already kind of done the strategizing out on a piece of paper. Now I'm just going to kind of copy them over here to make sure that I'm hitting my deadlines to be able to like create that. So I usually write out my phases. So when I'm doing my drafting phase, my editing phase, my production phase, and then of course the promo phase is the launch phase. And so that is what I'm going to now start adding in here. So that everything starts coming together. I know, once again, what I'm working on and when. So basically what I just added in there were any deadlines again, like I already have covers done, I already have some editing done, at least for the first book and part of the second book. And so what I have here is taken out those, and I've got in dates for like my beta read, dates for my ARC dates for when I'm going to be the formatting in January, and then of course this here is going to be spent time for like preparing for the launch and for getting those ARCs taken care of. And so now I'm basically just going to copy that process on over, only the full process this time, because I'm going to need to have in the dates for like cover designers and editors and all of those kinds of deadlines also added in for the remaining 3 books. Alright, so my neighbor started mowing his lawn. I'm sorry if you can hear that in the background, but I went ahead and added all of the due dates in, all of the important milestones that I need to do. I've got some weeks crossed off here, as you can see, for different stages. For instance, editing here, beta reading time limits, when I want to get my ARCs out. All of those dates are now in the calendar, and it's starting to look really busy. But the thing is here is that this is just one part of it. So for you, if you're just a fiction author, this is probably where you'll like stop this process, because now you've got all of your dates in here and you know what you have to get done and by when. And for me though, now I move on to the next part where I'm adding in my Thriving Scribes layer. So you're going to see a lot of green overlaid here on this red as well. But basically the process is exactly the same. I really start with my big launches. So I usually have, when it comes to Thriving Scribes, one big main focus each quarter. And so I usually have just like one big push launch each quarter. And then after I do add in those big launches, then I start adding in, again, the pre-work phase. So what I need to do up into the launch, what milestones I need to hit, what phase I'm in. And then also after I do that and the big rocks are in there, then I kind of start sprinkling in any open space where I could fit in any sales, flash sales, affiliate promotions, and those kinds of things. So I'm gonna go ahead and pop that up on my calendar as well, based off of this board list that I have outlined here. And we're really gonna start getting a feel for what my year looks like. Alright, so I did that, and I have added in all of my Thriving Scribes launch dates and promo periods and any important deadlines and things that I need to keep track of this year, as things progress. Now, looking at it, you can see that it looks like there's a lot on here, but I don't have myself really focusing on like more than one thing a week. You can see that most lines only have some red, which means it's book work, while others are focused on green for Thriving Scribes work. So I'm not like overpacking, and there's also a lot of space where like nothing's going on, and usually during that time is when I'm like drafting and doing things like that, or I'm not in a promotional or sales period inside of Thriving Scribes. And so this is what my calendar ends up looking like. And so once I have it like this, really what's left is now I start to kind of pull everything off of here into my planner, into my Thriving Scribes planner that looks like this. And I start basically pulling up where I'm doing my quarterly strategy sessions, and I use this as a basis, right? So again, anything on here can shift, but then I come into my planner, right, and I'm actually planning out my projects. If you can see here, I've got my quarterly planning project sheet there, and then I move on into getting them situated into months. So what I would basically do is, now with this as a basis and me doing my quarterly planning inside of my planner, I can start pulling these things in and plugging them into like my day-to-day planner here, like into my month. So where I've got my top 3 here, my word count target, any notes that I might need to keep track of, and then the same thing goes for weekly, when I would start then pulling it down into weekly, and I would know based off of this calendar that I'm really only focusing on one big rock at a time, and I'm not trying to do like so many things at one time. My focus is really lasered into focusing on one thing at a time, instead of kind of like not knowing what it is I'm supposed to be doing or why I'm doing it. So that's what that looks like. I hope that it was helpful to actually watch me like plug in and everything and fill it all in. For those of you who are fiction authors who are trying to make your own plan, or authorpreneurs where you're also doing fiction and also doing maybe another side hustle or another business, or you have services as well that you want to kind of make it all work in balance, this is how I do that, so that I know what I'm focusing on and when I need to focus on fiction, when I need to focus on business, when all of my launch dates are due. And so now that I have my launch dates in here and I have all of the important deadlines, when it gets into the nitty-gritty monthly strategy sessions and plugging these dates into like my weekly project management system, I know exactly what it is that I'm focusing on, and I can tell myself, remember, this is what phase I'm in my business, and I do have like maybe a lot of shiny objects coming at me. I have all of these other ideas coming up that I can add to the maybe or one day list there, and that this is really what needs to have my focus. So like you can see, there's actually quite a bit of space here, weeks where I'm not doing month. Of course, March is empty because that's my moving month, but there's places all along here where I could add in something in from my other brands, which, by the way, you don't see purple up here because those projects that were in that other column over here, this one right here, because those are not like super duper priorities for me. Those are actually more like passive income type brands where I don't have to be super active all of the time. So really with those, what I do is whenever I catch a break and I feel like I have a breather and I have time in between my schedule of doing all of this other stuff, that's when I start focusing on these things in the purple column, and they will like naturally shift into the calendar over here. So that, that's how they find their way into my schedule. So if this kind of behind the scenes type of video was enjoyable for you, if you really loved getting this behind the scene peek and you like this more kind of vlog style video, definitely let me know in the comments so that I know what you guys like and I can focus on creating the content that you're going to get the most value out of, or that you're really going to want to see the most. If you have any questions at all about what I did or why I did it, or you need some elaboration, let me know in the comments as well. I would love to answer any questions that you have. And if you need a little bit more help doing your own end of the year review or your own annual strategy session for your own author business, I actually hold a free week-long event every single year where we come together as fiction authors and do our own annual author review. I walk you through the exact same process that I do to do my own annual author review. You'll get the workbooks, you'll get daily challenges, and there's even a free Facebook group as well to connect with everybody else who's doing their own annual author review. If you're interested in joining us for this year's annual author review, go to thrivingscribes.com/AAR so that you can sign up for the free week-long event. Now, I will say that the live event is the week of December 13th. However, even though that is the week that it is live, the challenge is available throughout January. So even though you won't be there live with us and in there with the engagement and the challenges and all of that, you can still actually take part in your own annual author review by signing up at your own pace, even if you can't make it through that one week-long event all the way through January, so that you can come whenever it best fits into your schedule. So if you want a little bit more guidance on having your own annual author review, you'll find a sign-up link and everything in the description of this video as well. Thank you so much for watching this video. I do hope you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments, and make sure that you have liked and subscribed to my channel for more authorly goodness every single week. I will see you next week.